Welcome back to InhaleGamesHQ. You can call me COMM, and today we have our next installment in the Who is Apex Legends series, where we deep dive a legend, where they came from, why they fight, how they fight, as well as some tips and tricks and things and notes to help you better understanding and gameplay with this legend. In this case, we're talking about Conduit, the current newest legend added in Season 19 Ignite, and I've had a lot of fun compiling the facts and putting this video together, so if you learned something new or enjoyed the video, please leave it a like or share it with someone who you think could benefit from it. And with that said, let's talk about Conduit.
Let's go!
Looking first at her background, where she came from, Rowena Valentina Cafe Divina is 27, but was born and raised on the rebuilt world of Nexus. Rebuilt because of a war, a government coup that created chaos for its people, and eventually came to an end due to a monarch titan self-destructing, and this titan is now left overlooking her city, representing sacrifice. She tells this and other heroic tales to her siblings to inspire hope, and uses humor to both cope with the harsh realities and shield her loved ones from them. However, she couldn't quite shield her oldest sister Diwa, and so when tragedy struck her family, decided to take things into her own hands, and one night venturing out into the restricted radioactive battlefields where the Titan remains, salvaged the Titan's battery, and also forged a combat rig, which she then used to start fighting in local tournaments to earn money to support her family, and secretly hoping to get noticed for the Apex games. It was her dream after all. Heck, her whole family loved watching the games and even spent hours outside reenacting them, and so every victory helped her family and her chances, but at the cost of her life, as this battery's radioactive properties were slowly killing her, or are slowly killing her. But she didn't care. Eventually, her success does lead to an invite to the Apex games, the first contestant ever to join the Apex games from the neutral world of Nexus, so kind of a big deal. And even though at this point her sister had found out what was happening, Rowena had made her choice, was following her dreams and not only fighting for her family, but for her chance, especially now, before it's gone. So with a sad but inspiring backstory, and dropping now into the games as Conduit, she is a support legend with a really cool kit. We'll take a look at those abilities and how exactly they work, and how you can use them to take advantage in a fight or situation.
Not today, cup of tea.
As I mentioned, Conduit is a support legend, so looking first at her class passive really quick, which is one of the best perks in my opinion, allowing you to loot the smart loot blue bins, which will always provide a battery and one other large heal, and usually survival item as well, and if you're actually in the zone, will always provide a heat shield, which is really nice, especially with how teams are rotating these days. But also, you or anyone on the team with a support legend on it can now craft teammates back into the game, and with the most recent changes they made coming back into the game with most of your stuff now, this is super helpful as well. Looking at her actual passive, however, Survivor's Speed, this allows Conduit to catch up to her squad mates that are out of her tactical range of about 50 meters, via a 40% speed boost. There are a few conditions in which your passive will need in order to trigger, and if these conditions aren't met or break at any point, well, you won't trigger your boost, and this is okay because it is really easy to re-trigger again, but let's talk about those conditions. The first, of course, being that the legend you're trying to catch up to is outside that 50-meter range. 2, you'll need to be looking at or have them in kind of like a peripheral view, and then of course 3, already be in motion for about 3 seconds. This just allows the system to know that that's what you're actually wanting to do, just in case you're in a fight or not trying to trigger the speed boost or something. So provided those conditions are met, you'll get that 40% speed boost, or double time if you will, and as many times and for as long as they are outside of that range. There's no cooldown to this passive, just those conditions have to be met. Heck, you can actually run the whole map in this state. I've seen a clip where a duo landed opposite sides of the map, and they just ran the whole map. Pretty funny. A quick tip before we move on here though, as Conduit, be the legend to pull the revive, especially if it's during a hot situation, because she'll have that speed boost to get right back into the fight. All in all, really enjoying the passive, and Respawn giving a support legend a bit of movement to help, stick with her team and support her team is nice. And we'll get into a bit of the supporter mindset later. We're going to look now at her tactical, which can be a little complicated, so I'll do my best to break it down and hopefully note everything I can about it. But if you have any tips, or there's something I missed, or even something that changed since this is dropped, please leave it in the comments so we can have all the Apex facts for Conduit in one place. And remember, everything is timestamped down below. But moving on, Conduit's tactical, Radiant Transfer. This allows you to give yourself, as well as one other legend on the team, temporary shields. You do have to be within that previously mentioned tactical range of 50 meters, and these shields will apply over time, to you slower than your teammates, as well as you seem to get a little bit less, but it's broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1, regenerating the shield. All you have to do is just click the tactical. You don't have to hold it down or anything. It's easy to use. You can actually shoot, heal, throw nades. All you need to do while the healing is being applied. And if you have applied the shields, they can actually move outside that 50-meter range and still continue to get the shields applied to them. So, looking at the exact numbers here, your teammates will gain shields at a rate of about 16 shields per second over about 8 seconds, getting that full 125 red armor. But will apply about 8 shields per second over 8 seconds for about 64 shields to you. Now, once you apply them, the timer for phase 2 begins, and that's when you'll have 20 seconds to do whatever you want with these temporary shields. And you can do a lot. So keep in mind the visual marker on your screen when you have temp shields. It will slowly fade during this 30 seconds and then switch from the shield icon to this emergency icon, as you can see here. And that's when phase 3 kicks in. The shields start to fade about twice as fast as they were applied, totaling no longer than roughly 4 seconds, and then you'll lose those temp shields, and of course regain your tactical. Something pretty cool here because of the timing of conduit shields, by the time they run out, they are ready to be applied again, so essentially this gives you the opportunity to run only temp shields, but because, like I said, it seems to apply to you a bit slower, not as much, it's kind of not as ideal for you or like a solo play, but just continuously applying this to a legend is going to be super helpful, and in duos is going to be a great aggressive support legend to have. You can do a lot in a situation with temp shields, and this is where we'll have some tips and things to note. So before we move on to our ultimate, let's talk about a few of these things we've been able to discover. Being shot at will stop the shield from charging for a brief second, and then after a second of not being shot, it'll continue to charge. And you can also pre-apply these shields, which I wouldn't really recommend because of the first phase window. If they haven't taken any damage within that 8 seconds while they're, starting the push, when the shields are applied, it's kind of wasted. So timing's kind of key, and having your tactical to shield boost and essentially confidence boost the right legend, allowing them to continue with the pressure and damage difference they have while you back them up is crucial. First, remember, just because you have those temp shields, if the play isn't necessarily there, pulling off and using a battery might still be smarter, so do that and Conduit can go back to charging up, you can be full and the play can continue. But if you do have the opportunity and the opening damage, and whether you're Conduit yourself or any legend, finishing the fight you started, knowing you have some shields that are building up or that have been applied to you, while the other player has backed off and is likely healing, is an optimal play here. This is a good time also to prioritize using a med pack for healing first rather than shields. Pop the temp shields on yourself or a teammate and then start using the med pack. This is good after a reset as well. Or even using your temporary shields to pull a revive, allowing you to have the numbers in a fight, and then because you've already applied the shields to yourself and you've pulled that res within the 8-second window, they will actually get a few seconds where it'll start to apply to them as well, and hopefully then you can kind of pull out a clutch. Bit of a niche tip there. Now, it's very easy to note if you have been shielded by a conduit. Like I said, there's the icons and they slowly fade and change, but you'll also note that there's different colors to your icon when using your tactical as a conduit, and this just indicates the current shield level of the legend that you're about to apply the shield to. So white indicates that they are fully shielded, so don't waste your temp shields. Green, you have been fully temp shielded. Yellow, they are about 50%-ish, a bit above shields, and so they might need a bit of help soon. But red is when they are 50% or less in shields, and those are who you want to prioritize shielding, of course. So don't waste a shield on people who need them, and that's kind of, again, something we'll talk in the supporter mindset, but is a pretty good tip here. Try to make sure you're temporary shielding the right person, though. Heck, another tip here, you can actually just drop better armors for these people and then support them, using them as bait or just amping those shields that you gave them, knowing that you're kind of holding that midfield as they jump into the action. Or just using it to give yourself the extra shields to run or rotate out of a sticky situation is totally fair as well. As we move on to her ultimate, the energy barricade, as you can see, it dispenses these batteries, 7 of them specifically, which have an area of effect around them that will shock an enemy, slowing them about 15% and dealing 10 damage per tick per second to them. Once deployed, these batteries will take about 4 seconds to launch and then another 4 seconds to actually start up and activate once they hit the ground, so activation takes a little while, and a counter tip here is to just move through or around a conduit ult before it has a chance to actually activate and trap or mess you up. But if it has activated and you have to rotate through it, walking is actually the fastest way. Trying to jump or slide, you'll kind of feel slowed a bit more than just walking through it. When using this barricade, The higher you place the indicator here, as you can see, the further apart horizontally these batteries will go, allowing for space between the batteries but a wider spread. This is helpful for controlling a larger space where you don't necessarily mind if the enemies get through the barricade because of additional defenses or snipers. Or you can just put the indicator lower at level and you'll see these batteries a bit closer together for an overlap spread, which won't allow enemies through it without, of course, them taking that damage. And lastly, a note here, you can actually place it at your feet and then launch them in a V-shape mode here, as you can see. And with a cooldown of about 2.5 minutes, you'll need roughly 3 ultimate accelerants to get this back, because this ultimate is definitely useful. Arguably, this is really meant to help support team zone control and rotation, but can be used a bit aggressively to flush a team out of an area or trap a team in an area, forcing their rotation through it, or even trapping, an opening knock and forcing them to play a man down or leave him behind. I will note that they can be destroyed, each of these batteries, by about 250 damage, which is actually pretty good because they have a hitbox, and similar to catalyst traps, which have been patched, so maybe this will too, but you can actually just hide behind them as cover. So if you can call this in a building, I will note, don't call it in too compact because the batteries will just destroy each other and you'll be left with just a couple. Try to get it as spread out as you can in this building if you're going to use it to hold a building, and so that way you can try to heal up, use these batteries as cover, and continue the play. Also, if a legend spends time shooting these, that's good for you because you know they're wasting their ammo, time, and attention on you, or forcing a team to use a pad or pick-me-up or other abilities to get around these batteries just ideally puts your team in a more advantageous spot, knowing that these tacticals or ultimates are on cooldown.
Let's go!
So now we know why she fights, how she fights, and a few ways in which we can capitalize on it depending on our situation, but now let's talk about the supporter mindset. These legends, and specifically with Conduit, you need to have eyes on both legends at all times. This really just goes for all teammates. You should have eyes on your teammates, but in this case you kind of want to play the middleman, keeping up with that speedy octane, or at least always having eyes on him so you can activate that passive push and then back him up, while also keeping eyes on first time Timmy, who's still looting up the same POI for 12 minutes just in case he gets, jumped by a team rotating in late zone. This way you can support either of them with your passive, getting to them as fast as you can, and then tactically boosting them with their shield. I've also found supporter legends kind of like to lean towards sniping, and the key with sniping, and again this goes for anyone not necessarily just supporter legends, is actually knowing when to stop, or just be cracked up close, I guess. But it may seem like you have the shot, or you might get one lined up while you're way up there on your mountain, but your team is pushed in, the whole fight has changed, you're alone and looking through a scope at nothing. Listen to your team saying, hey, we need you in here. Not out there, but in here. Use that passive, boost up to them, shield them up, and clutch the fight. But definitely, again, be within range of all your teammates and kind of know that you're going to be supporting them. Not the first one in, but usually the second one to those fights. As a support, you also want to accept that getting assists is kind of crucial. Supporting the play is your role, so hopefully you're an ass man. Sure, because Conduit has an aggressive class, sometimes the opening is there, and like I said earlier, feel free to take it, but overextending and leaving your team without heals and supporting calls, and just leaving 2 fraggers to run in and die, will probably always leave you heading back to the lobby. So again, accepting that you're in that supporter role is key, and figuring out who is most important to support, like I kind of mentioned earlier, is going to be valuable. If that first person in just kind of wants to pepper or look or call some things out but isn't the one taking the damage, just because you see them going in there first doesn't mean that they're the first to be temporary shielded, right? Because like I said, you might have that bullheaded player on your team that just likes to rush on in, go crazy. They're the ones who you're going to want to be temporary shielding. Sharing batteries, of course, and heals in general, because you can source them from the blue bins, is going to be awesome and supportive. Also, being vocal about who you temporary shielded is helpful as well, just because sometimes in the chaos you can't really see all the indicators, so knowing that you have been buffed might help in that situation. But before we wrap up, we'll lastly note some loadouts and legend combinations. Because she is an aggressive side of the support, I found a lot of success matching my kit, especially with R9 up close and then like a ranged AR, Nemesis, Hemlock, Flatline, or the currently crafted R3, or again using something like a triple take or a sniper in place of that range will help you a lot as well. But then because you're usually pushing in and then supporting that opening fragger, having something like that R9 or CAR to swap to up close is ideal. But let me know what you've been using. In terms of legends, however, she partners great with legends like Rev, Octane, Horizon, someone who can kind of jump into the play and start the chaos, giving her the opportunity to maximize the use of kit. Or on the flip side, less aggressive but doubling on heals and zone control, legends like Lifeline, Watson, and Catalyst have actually been pretty successful here as well. But let me know where you found your success with Conduit so far. Now, really quick, I took her into the firing range, just quickly testing her against every other legend and just trying to find any weird interactions. And for the most part, there wasn't any. As long as you can see the legend you're trying to tactical and they're within that 50-meter range, it didn't matter if anything physical, like a barrier, was interrupting it, like a catalyst wall or a Gibraltar shield. But when trying to tactical a phased Wraith, you will not be able to find her. You have to wait till she's come out of the phase, and then you'll be able to trigger her and start amping. And of course, because this does deal with shields, the temporary shields do take effect from a crypto drone, just the same as any other shield, which is nice. She has some cute animations, quips, and other nods to legends who she idolizes going into the games, and hopefully more lore, collectibles, and championship medals for the fan back on Nexus as she continues to make waves in the game. So let me know if you've been enjoying this legend or plan on checking her out after this, because I've been crushing hard. So I think we touched on basically everything we needed to, and again, if I missed anything or ways that you kind of like to play as a support class or as Conduit, again, let me know so we can compile everything in one video in one space here for everyone learning how to best perform with Conduit. But squad, that is everything for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Who is Conduit, and hopefully learned all you need to know about her, why she fights, how she fights, and how you can better your gameplay with her. I know it was a bit of a long one, but I've taken notes from all my other past episodes if you want to check those out, and really did my best to try to get this one good, and again, hope you enjoyed it. So leave a like if you did gain Apex intel, or leave a piece of intel for me if I missed about Conduit that you like. And of course, if you want to come join the action, I'm live over on Twitch, InhaleGamesHQ, IGHQ. But as always, just thanks for being here. Stay safe, stay gaming, and I'll see you in the next one. Comms out.
He's